Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast. For our second interview of the last Friday in February, we have Eva Vergos on the show, who is running for Group
28.
Circuit Court Bench
Circuit Court Bench.
here in Hillsborough County. And
Pinellas County.
Pinellas County, sorry.
Pinellas and Pasco.
Pinellas and Pasco County. So circling back, Group
28.
28, Pinellas Pasco, the 6th Judicial Circuit, and she's coming in today to talk to us about her campaign, her story, her career, and we're glad to have you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. This is really exciting.
Sorry, I had a senior moment there. You're probably like the 9th person who's running that I've talked to, so I start to get mixed up on the groups and the counties and whatnot. So you currently are working as a prosecutor, correct?
Yes.
And is that up in the Port Richey office?
Yes.
Okay. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong. Are you related to Ken Foote, or are you?
We're not related,
Okay.
but Ken Foote and I have a child together.
That's okay. That's just occurred to me as I was talking to you. So, in any event, you've been a prosecutor in Pasco County for how long?
I've been a prosecutor with the 6th Circuit for 18 and a half years.
Okay.
19 years in May.
Okay. And has it always been in Port Richey, or were you ever in Pinellas or Dade?
I did a summer in Pinellas County before my 3rd year of law school, and then when I got hired on for a full-time prosecutor position, I was in the Newport Richey office.
And are you a Florida native?
No, I
Okay.
was born in Greece.
Okay.
And was in Greece for about 8.5, 9 years when
Oh,
my
wow.
family, right. So both of my parents are from Greece.
Sure.
My mother had moved to New York when she was about 9 years old and grew up in the Bronx,
Okay.
and then had gone back to Greece, met my father. They got married and had several children there. And then we moved to the States when I was about 8.5. We moved to New York for a couple of years, and then we moved to Florida when I was in middle school.
Now, I've been to Greece. I went well, she wasn't my wife at the time, but my wife now in law school for a study abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And what an experience that was. I became addicted to tzatziki on my trip to Greece, and still to this day, just by the bucket load can go through that stuff. We flew to, is it Thessaloniki?
Thessaloniki.
Actually, I think we flew into Athens, and then we
Mhm.
had to take a car to Thessaloniki, and then from Thessaloniki, you took a hydrofoil out to the islands. And I think our study abroad was on Skopelos, but then we also went to Skiathos. We went to Santorini and stayed on Santorini for a while. And then at the end of that trip, we came back to Athens and stayed there for like 2 nights before we came back. So I want to talk to you about Greece in a little bit.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
We'll get there.
We'll circle back.
So, are you an only child, or do you have siblings?
No, I am one of 5.
Oh, wow.
I have an older sister and an older brother, and a younger sister and a younger brother.
Are you the only attorney in the family?
No, my older brother is also an attorney.
Where does he work?
He works up in Newport Richey. He does Social Security disability and
Oh, wow,
personal
you gotta give me
injury.
his card. I get a lot of calls for that, and I never know
Okay.
who to send them to. So high school was in Florida or New York?
In Florida, Gulf
Okay.
High School.
Okay, where'd you go?
Gulf High School,
Okay, and then how about college?
St. Leo University.
Okay, was that the only place you applied, or was there a couple places? How did you decide to go down there?
I had applied to a couple of places, but I liked St. Leo. I liked the location. I liked everything about it, so I decided to stay closer to home for undergrad.
Okay. Well, I think you're probably the second or third person. I know Judge Taylor went down there, and Scott Bonaventa, who's running as well. Bonavita, sorry, who's running as well. I think he did some time down there. So, it's a good school.
Have you been there?
My sister-in-law, I think, went to dental school down there.
You have to go. Just
Yeah.
go take a trip, bring
Yeah.
your wife, bring the kids. There's
Beautiful.
a really beautiful lake out there. You can picnic out there. It's so, you feel like you're coming off the beaten path
Right.
and just unwinding for a moment. It's really beautiful.
So how did you end up back in the Sixth Circuit? Did you work at all down there after law school, or did you come right back here?
Well, law school, I went to Syracuse, New
Oh, I'm
York.
sorry, you went to
So,
undergrad. Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
law school I left altogether.
Okay.
When I was
Oh,
in
Syracuse
undergrad,
is a polar opposite.
so in
Cold.
in undergrad, I did some work with the Sunrise Domestic Violence Shelter.
I was just emailing them moments ago.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
they're an incredible group of people who do really good work. And so I got I got involved in the domestic violence,
Sure.
work during undergrad. And then I decided I wanted to go to law school. I knew I wanted to go to law school. And so when I was applying, I had the need to get further away than I
Well,
did
it's
for
pretty far
undergrad.
away.
So
Yeah, I mean, you could have gone to
ultimately,
Portland, but Syracuse is pretty far away, and from a climate perspective, is a lot different too.
it was an incredible experience. I don't regret it for a minute.
My one of my aunts lived up in Syracuse, and we used to go up there every summer, and we'd go by car, so we got to see the whole East Coast. But I thought it was a really cool town, and beautiful, nice woods, and
Lake Erie is
yeah,
up there, and
yeah.
it's an incredible place. It really is.
So did you get what was 3 years there, 2.5 years there,
3 years there.
and did you intern anywhere while you were up there?
My last year I did a internship with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District
Oh,
of
wow.
New York.
Oh wow.
So for a year I was there, which was a really interesting experience because it took me twice as long to get my background screening done because of my dual citizenship.
Sure.
And so it was an interesting
What
experience.
year would
just
that have
to,
been?
1997.
Okay. Okay. Now, which is
No,
the,
I'm sorry, Josh. It would have been in 2000.
okay. Now, which district is it that's always been involved in the whole presidential deal? Is it the Southern District, the Northern District?
I think it's the Southern.
Okay.
Or for New York, it might be the Middle District of New York, which
Okay.
would have
I
been
think that's
down
like
in.
the Southern and the Northern, because they're always coming up when it's talking about the Mueller investigation and all this other stuff. Well, that's interesting.
It was really interesting.
Especially in New York. I feel like a lot of federal stuff is happening in New York.
Well, we were border. So, I
Okay.
mean, it's right by Canada. It's
Sure.
right by, so you're doing a lot of the border work, a lot of the drug trafficking work, there was a lot of pornography work that was being done, and then along with the white collar stuff that, of course, the U.S. Attorney's Office is known for. So it was a really interesting experience. I did that for a year.
Wow. And then when you graduated, where'd you go?
Came back home.
Came back home.
The summer before my third year of law school, I came home and I got a job with Bernie McCabe. I was working in the appellate division with Marie King. I don't know if you remember Marie.
I remember her very well. Yeah, there was a couple I had to send up the line.
Yeah.
I was just happy that I didn't have to write them. So I
Well,
was like,
right,
there you go.
because county attorneys,
Yeah.
you have to write your own.
When was that?
That was the summer of 2000, or I guess I graduated in 2001 from law school, so it was the summer before my third year of law school.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was when I was there. 'Cause
I think you graduated in 02.
Yeah, I was there 2002 to 2005.
Yeah, so it was before you.
Okay. And then from there you went to Pasco?
So from there, once I really got to know the office a little bit, and I spent that summer there, which was when I met Ken. I
Are
applied.
you and Ken still together? I don't want to.
No,
Okay.
no.
He was my trial team coach at
Oh,
Stetson.
was he?
So I got to go to Chicago and
Uh-huh.
compete for the national championship, and he was my coach. And,
Yeah.
Ken can be a galvanizing figure, but he was amazing very early on in the courtroom. He's
Mm-hmm.
just got a way about him that he kind of owns his space and who he's talking to. And
He
so,
does.
as a young trial team person meeting Ken, I wanted to emulate his cool in the courtroom. And then when I went to the state, of course, he was
Right.
he was in Pinellas, and I worked with him. And then since then, we've run into each other on here and there. But in any event,
Yeah, so I applied, and I had my interview with Bruce Bartlett and Sean Crane, who is now a circuit
Sure.
court judge,
Sure.
and I was offered a position. My family is in the Newport Richey area, so it made sense for me to take a position in that.
Greek, I'm surprised it's not all
Tarpon?
the Tarpon Springs area. So, but anyway, well, that makes sense. And so then you went up there and misdemeanor court to begin with, and then
Yeah, so I started in county court with Judge Sultan at the time, and
Okay.
then I did about 13 months there. At the time, which was back in 2001, I was the only attorney in that division. And
Really?
so it was just me and the judge every
Yeah,
single day.
yeah.
It was my room, his room, and we would just spend.
so you almost learned how to run a courtroom at that time.
Well, I don't know that I want to say that, but I definitely
was an
saw a lot
education,
of it.
for sure,
Yes.
yeah.
And so I did probably, my goodness, I don't even know, well over 30, 40 trials during that time period with
Right.
him. And after 13 months, I was promoted to circuit, and I started doing work as a felony attorney.
And who was the judges that you've been under as felony attorney?
Oh, well, I've been in front of Judge Mills, Judge Diskey, Judge Crane, Judge Day, Judge Hansel currently, Judge Andrews, Judge Balone, Judge Covert, Judge
So-
Bray.
So I taught right when I was going into law school. I don't know why they had a law school student doing it. It might have been right when I graduated, but I taught at Akron College a class on voir dire with Judge Covert.
Okay.
Judge Balone was my LTA in felony.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Andrews was my first judge that not only was the first judge that I was under in misdemeanor, my first divorce trial, which I did 2 weeks after leaving the state attorney's office, was in front of Judge Andrews. Judge Hansel took me on a warrant delivery when she was still a prosecutor that I tell the story to today because it was the most, because I don't know if they had this in Pasco, but it was like before you could take time off, you had to do like a couple ride-alongs or something like that. Did they have that with
No.
you guys? So I did one like DUI checkpoint, but then I did a warrant one with Mary, and that was just crazy because I was with all these SWAT guys,
Yeah.
fire marshal, EMTs, and it was down on the south side of St. Pete, which I knew that area very well growing up in St. Pete, and so I'm going to hijack this interview for a second because I love the story. I don't know if I've told it yet on the podcast, but so I didn't really know Mary that well. I mean, she was a big-time felony attorney, and I was, still a misdemeanor attorney. And they said, "Well, meet me at this time." So I met her, and I met her at this building which I'd driven by a million times in my life, and I just thought it was like a evacuated warehouse. Well, it turns out it's where a lot of the SWAT and a lot of the undercover people it's kind of their station.
Mm-hmm.
So I walk in there and there's rap music blaring in one room. There's Johnny Cash in the other. They're like lifting weights. They've all got ninja masks on and jackets, and they have all this gear. And so then we go out to this field, and they're almost like running football plays.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay,
Yeah.
these are going to be the first guys through, and the blah, 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 blah. I was like, what is going on? This is just, I was scared. I was excited. I was all this other stuff. So then we go to this house. It's right on the corner of the street. It's one of those houses where the bottom floor is a garage and the top floor is an apartment. They go up and they do the flashbang in the window, and then all of them run up the stairs, and I'm just standing there with a fire marshal. And I know this neighborhood. It's not one I want to be in after hours. I'm sitting here, and every car that goes by, I'm just, my ears are pricked, and all of a sudden we hear this glass break, and a body flies out of the second story window and lands on the roof of the house next door, rolls off, hits the ground like a sack of potatoes, and then comes running straight at us. And it was one of the people that
One of
was
the
in there
guys.
trying to get away.
Right.
And I was like, my heart in my throat. I didn't know what to do. And the fire marshal had a mag light, and he lifted it up, and he shined it in the guy's eyes, and the guy hit the ground because I think he probably thought it was a gun with
Right.
the light on it. And luckily, that was the end of it. But that was the craziest experience. So forever, Judge Hansel now will be attached to that story in my mind. So sorry to
She
go
would
off.
love to hear that story. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
she probably,
She was
I don't
a
even know if
cowboy,
she
yeah.
remembers it now.
Probably
I mean,
not.
it's,
That's probably just a Thursday for her.
Right,
but,
right.
For me, that was a life-changing event. But anyway, and who else did you say? So Judge Andrews, Judge Crane. I knew Judge Crane because did he do ordinance violations in Pinellas County for a while as a judge? He was doing something in Pinellas as a judge for a minute there.
he was, but when you came on, Josh, he would have been a division director
Right.
in county court.
He got elected like my first year, or appointed, or
Appointed,
whatever
yeah.
it was. But anyway, well, yeah, I mean, you've had a who's who as far as judges that you've worked
I
in front of.
have. I mean, 19 years, you go through a lot of courts.
That's a long time to work for the state attorney's office, because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's kind of a point of no return for people in the state. Like, either people leave 3 or under, if you get past 5, chances are you're probably staying there long term. And so, but that's a long time to work as a prosecutor.
So I love being a
Yeah.
prosecutor. I mean, I went to law school to do this kind of work. I had no other intention of doing other type of work as far as being an attorney is concerned. I love the things I get to do. I've been a lead trial attorney for maybe 9 years now. So now I supervise a lot of attorneys under me. I make a lot of the decisions regarding what we're doing, how we're doing it, what charges we're filing, what deals we're giving out, what negotiations we're entertaining. And so I enjoy my work so much. I mean, the only thing I would leave for is the bench.
And you've got to be pretty high up there at this point.
I am.
Yeah. So a couple of bones to pick with Newport Richey for me. So the first one is you guys stole Scott Rosenwasser from
We
us over
did.
in Pinellas County, and Scott is one of my favorite people in the world. We were both Division A attorneys together. He was second in command under Joe Ballone, and it was Jason Stedman, Allison Ridenauer, myself, and Aaron Slavin, all in Division A. I think Mark Plotnick came up at some point in Division A too. But Scott is just a prince, an amazing attorney, amazing prosecutor, and a voice of reason. I find he's not a pushover by any stretch. He's tried every case that there is, but he'll listen to me. If I have a request, it's not just a pocket no. It's he'll do the heavy lifting and think about it. So I've always appreciated that, and I was not bummed that he went out there, but just because I don't have quite so many cases in Newport Richey as I do in Pinellas, I don't have him.
So Scott's actually in our Dade City office.
Oh, is he?
And yeah, so
I thought it
he
was Newport Richey. Okay,
no,
well, that's my mistake.
and so he I think he has maybe one case in the Newport Richey office, and I have a homicide that I'm prosecuting in Dade City. So we cross often, and we talk, of course, because we communicate regarding the office and things. But he's not in our Newport Richey office on a daily basis.
Okay.
So I'm not going to take full responsibility for it. I'm gonna.
You've avoided friendly fire on that one. So then the other one is, and this is embarrassing to me, you being of Greek origin, because it was either Tom Koskinas or Mike Halkitis, but I think Tom Koskinas replaced me when I left the state. He came from Pasco
Newport Richey
to Pinellas.
Yes.
So my 5 years ended on a Friday.
Okay.
My 3 years ended on a Friday. That was when I left. I went up, talked to Bernie. He said, ballsy move going out on your own. I got retained that weekend on like a 5-count L&L in Newport Richey. And in that case, the complainant was the mother, and she had like 4 kids, and she had accused all the fathers of each of the 4 kids of
molesting the children.
Right. And you work this, that raises some flags. I mean, not that it couldn't happen, but the probability of having 4 different fathers, all of whom are pedophiles, it's a tough sell. So I called that Monday. I had less than 72 hours out of the state attorney's office, hadn't even received my last paycheck from Bernie, and I got Halkitis on the phone. And I said, yeah, I just wanted to talk to you on this one if I can. There's a couple of allegations of different fathers, all from this woman here. And Halkitis goes, you defense attorneys are all alike. You're always trying. And I was like, I literally haven't received my last paycheck from Bernie yet. And he softened up after that point. But I don't know, I probably just caught him on a bad morning. But in any event, yeah. So in any event, Newport Richey, there's all these little stories that I have about Newport Richey, so I always remember that one.
So the sex cases, the child abuse, I did about 10 years in just doing those for us. And we do the live investigations on all felony cases. And for the Newport Richey, all of the child abuse, child molestation cases are invested on Fridays.
Right.
And so for about 10 years, every Friday, I was sitting in a room talking to kids about all of these things. And certainly the things that you're talking about, the fact that there's family issues or divorce issues or things that are going to cause people to have other motivations for whatever it is that they're reporting. So I do primarily
family law. And
so then
this comes up as a leverage point constantly in family law. And it's hard because, as you know, sexual abuse of children rarely happens in front of a witness.
Right.
It's rarely reported contemporaneously with when it occurred, so it's very difficult to get a SAVE exam,
Correct.
get physical evidence. So it's most often the case that you have a child alleging it and an adult denying it, and that's all you've got.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's such an emotionally charged subject matter for juries. Maybe we'll get into that in a minute, but I'm very interested in how the criminal justice system treats those cases and those defendants, because it's such an emotionally charged area. It's very difficult to have an intellectual conversation on what we should be doing, and that's more of a legislative type of deal.
Right.
I mean, as a judge, you've got to follow the law, prosecutor, that sort of thing. But
Obviously.
in any event, so you said you always knew you wanted to be a prosecutor. Did you always know you wanted to be a judge?
No.
When did that seed get planted? If you can pinpoint it.
Probably about 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
and I've considered it several times. I ran for county court once
When was
in
that?
Pasco in 2002.
Oh, wow.
And it was an interesting experience. My son was not even a year old at the time, so
Sure.
it was a different experience at
Different
that point.
Eva Vergos, I'm sure.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it was a completely different Eva
Yeah.
Vergos. At that point, it was, I think I had been at the state for 9, 10 years. So my level of experience, I felt, was different, and I
Right.
think was better suited at that time for a county position. And then I kind of put it in the back burner. My son, of course, grew and
Yeah.
is going to be 9 this August, 4 days before or 3 days before the election. So
Oh, wow.
hopefully this will be a good birthday
So
present.
2012. No, 2000. When was he born?
11.
Okay. Okay.
So he'll be 9 this year.
So how have you? Well, let me ask you this: Who are you running against?
I have one opponent currently. His name is Evan Freeman.
I know Evan Freeman. Do I know Evan Freeman? I do know that name. Does he go by a different name, like a nickname or something?
Not that I know of.
What type of law does he practice?
I understand that he did a lot of civil transactional law for a long time in Pinellas County. He is currently at the public defender's office in Port Richey. He
Okay.
took that position sometime mid 2019.
Maybe we're Facebook friends. I don't know how it is, but I know I've seen that name before. Is this a seat that's opening up because someone's retiring, or is it a new seat, or what's the?
It's a seat that's opening up because someone's retiring.
Who's retiring?
Judge St. Arnold and Judge Covert are both retiring. So there's 2
Judge
open.
Covert's retiring?
Yes.
Well, he was a police officer for a long time, so
He
I'm sure
was.
probably. Wow, because I mean, he's what? Not even a decade on the bench, is he? Maybe,
he
'cause I feel
has
like
he
he-
has to have been more than a decade, because
'Cause-
I would have been in front of him before 2010.
Well,
so.
yeah, I guess I'm dating myself, because I think he got elected right around the time I left the state attorney's office, which would have been 2005, 2006. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I sometimes I feel like I just left yesterday, but St. Arnold's retiring too. But that's not until the fall. I'm just thinking, because I've got trials coming up in front of St. Arnold. I'm trying to figure.
He'll be there through the
Yeah,
year.
it might
You're
be
good.
you. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But anyway, so how have you found your campaign this time around as compared to before?
Well, I'm running circuit, so it's
Well,
a lot bigger.
That's different, bigger for sure. But I mean, more of a time commitment, more of a. Do you feel like you're a more educated campaigner than you were the first time?
I mean, I certainly had made a lot of really good connections during the first time that I've maintained, because they
Sure.
were wonderful people, and I didn't want to lose those connections just professionally. So that's helpful. As far as going out there, I definitely, it's different. I'm a different person. I think having children changes you in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and so I mean, I think you have too, right?
I have
so
too, and it does.
it-
I hated when people said that when I didn't have children.
it's true
It
though.
drove me up a wall. It was like, I'm an educated person, I'm an enlightened person, I can empathize, I can sympathize, and I probably could, but 100% it changes.
It just
your point of
changes
view,
you.
your priorities, your values. I agree with you completely.
It just does, and for me, going from and before I had my son, I mean, I would be at the state 60 hours a week. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it was my life, and it certainly is still something that I love, and I put everything towards, but I balance my life a lot better now. And
So aside from mom and prosecutor, what else are you involved in charitable stuff? Do you have hobbies? What sort of
oh,
stuff are you into?
a lot of things that I'm doing are with my son. So
Sure.
his name's Gabriel. He is, I'm an Odyssey of the Mind coach for him. Do you know
I
Odyssey
don't
of the
know what
Mind?
that is. Tell
And
me.
he has his competition tomorrow,
Oh
so wish
wow.
him luck.
Okay.
Odyssey of the Mind is a really incredible program. It is sponsored by the schools, and so it's a competition, and it's a worldwide competition where it's a group of 7 children that get together in the same age range, and they are given a problem, one of 5 different problems to choose from, and then they have to solve the problem, whatever
Okay.
that means. It could be a technical problem or a motor vehicle problem or so for his competition, their problem is it's called the effective detective, and it is a detective who is supposed to solve one of the world mysteries.
Okay.
And the world mystery that they have chosen is the finding of Atlantis and
Oh,
why
wow.
Atlantis sank. So they have to do a lot of research and learn about this subject, and then they have to create all of the props, the skit, the background, the costumes, and
That's
and they
great.
have 8 minutes to do it.
And you said
And
this is through the school or is this outside of the school?
it is through the school sponsors the teams, and then the teams have compete under that school name. But it is a worldwide competition,
That's
and
really
so
cool. I'm surprised I'd never heard of that before.
it is incredible because you're not allowed to assist them. So as a coach, I can
Yeah, I was wondering
help.
what does that mean to be a coach for that?
Right. So I can help collaborate in the sense of, what supplies do you need? Let me write it down and then go to the store for
Sure,
you.
yeah.
And you guys need to stop playing around and get to work. But you can't help them. They have to do it all on their own. They have to do everything on their own. So we make sure that they can use the tools properly before handing it to them. But they have to cut their own wood. They have to
Wow.
glue their own things.
How
and
great that is.
It is incredible.
That
So they've
is-
been working on that since August.
And he likes it?
He loves it. This is his 3rd year doing
Oh wow,
it.
so he's done it before.
And it's my 2nd year coaching,
That's
and that
cool.
takes
A lot
a
of time.
lot
Oh,
of
sure.
time.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and then we have baseball, and and so for me, outside of Gabriel, I do a lot of things with the sexual assault team, sexual assault response team for work. I will go out to the jail and train some of the new deputies on courtroom tactics and how to do things inside the courtroom, testimony, etc. I do a lot of things through work, of course, and then as a lead trial attorney, I supervise a number of other attorneys under me. So anytime that they're on duty, I'm basically on duty, and you know how that goes, Josh. I mean,
God.
duty calls at all
Yeah,
times.
especially at the beginning. It's always Christmas and Thanksgiving.
Those
and
warrants come all the time, and we go out to the scenes, of course, and so you have to make yourself pretty much available to this career.
I have a funny story I'll tell you off air about Judge Ramsberger and now Judge Syracusa, but at the time Prosecutor Syracusa, but I'm not going to tell it.
Yeah.
So, well, let me ask. So, I hadn't planned to ask you about this, but I want to ask you about this because I think you're probably uniquely situated to educate me on it. I consider myself a liberal person. I'm not going to ask you about politics. I consider myself a pretty progressive person. I not to say I'm a feminist by any stretch, but I really try and, especially, now with the daughter, I really try and think in those terms. But there was a situation when Kobe Bryant died a couple weeks ago, month ago, or whatever. And I'm not a big sports fan. I have entry level knowledge. Obviously, I know who Kobe Bryant was, but the helicopter went down, and all of a sudden on social media, everybody was saying, "Oh my God, Kobe! This giant in the world of sports has passed away." Whatever. Skip ahead about an hour or two. Everybody was, but he was credibly accused of sexually, molesting or sexually abusing or raping or being
Sexual misconduct.
Sexual misconduct with this person. And so I asked the question, and I should know better than to use social media for social studies, but I asked the question just because a lot of people were almost stating it as a fact. But he was, he was a sexual abuser or whatever the thing may be. And one of the biggest problems that I have as an attorney, both in criminal and private practice, one of my biggest pet peeves is when attorneys tell me things as though they were in the room. I hate it. I try not to do it. And when people report to me, they're like, yeah, but such and such did this. I was like, how do you know that? You weren't there, right? So this is what your client or the victim is telling you, and obviously you're an advocate for this person, but you just don't know. And so my question was, was he convicted of it? Was it proved to be true? I think I recall it being settled out of court. So what do we know? And someone posted, always trust women or always believe women. And that struck me as odd for a second. And I said, well, does that mean never trust men, or what does that mean? And obviously we're going through the Me Too movement, and this has become a hot topic, but as a prosecutor and I'm sure as a judge, that you find yourself in these situations. And I was intellectually invested with the point of, you can't have platitudes in this. You've got to judge it on a case-by-case basis, because you just don't know what's going into it. I mean, they're very, very difficult cases, as we discussed before, and I promise I'm getting to a question here. But, this person who I respect, they said, always trust women. I said, I don't know if I agree with always trust women. And I said, maybe I could get behind always trust victims, but even in that situation, I don't know that I can. I really don't think you can apply a blanket philosophy to it. So, sorry, that was kind of a rambling question, but I'm interested to kind of hear your opinion on that.
I will tell you that after, I don't even know how many trials that are involved in sex cases, or how many just prosecution. There's been hundreds of cases that I've prosecuted involving sex cases, and dozens of trials that I've done through jury trial. And the same criteria do not apply to any of them. They're each individual. Every single time there is something unique and individual about that case, about that person, about those facts, about the defendant, about the victim, if we want to label them defendant and victim in those situations. And I think that the worst thing that we can do is feed into any type of rhetoric that just creates a blanket statement across the board, because you're going to miss big things. And when you're talking about these kind of cases that kind of they start and they have a life of their own at some point, there's a lot of things that kind of start occurring right away that are almost instantaneous. And when you're talking about the type of sanctions that are going to be imposed, and the type of criminal sanctions and Department of Corrections sanctions that are going to be imposed, you have to take them on a case-by-case basis.
And especially on children, no matter what, it impacts them. Whether it happened or it didn't happen.
Absolutely.
If you've got a child who's false reporting something, that's, emblematic of an issue in and of itself that you've got to become concerned about. But just even going through the process, no matter what happened, just really kind of leaves its fingerprints on everybody involved in it. So I just had a hard time with always trust women. Not that that not from any kind of sexual politic thing, but I just was like, I just don't think you can, like you say, kind of use a stereotype or something there. But what are the other big parts about it? I'm sorry, going off on a tangent again, but I always, as a prosecutor, I felt like I started off with a probability of conviction in those cases, because juries hear that and you can just see it in their reaction. They automatically look at the defendant differently, and it's just a thing. And as a defense attorney, the cases that I've done, I've told clients, the best of cases, it's not a even playing field what you're walking into here. Do you agree with that, or not agree with that, or
I think it is hard for people to listen to things that involve especially children, sex, physical abuse, sexual abuse. I think it's hard for people to listen to that kind of stuff. And I think that, having picked those juries, they are the hardest juries to pick. They're harder than homicide juries by far.
Yeah.
Because most people on your jury panel for a homicide, or potential jury panel for a homicide, don't have personal experience, or don't know someone
they haven't been murdered,
who has had, right, or don't have a family member or some other personal experience of somebody connected to them that has this history. But with the sex cases, most of the time you will not.
It's pervasive.
It is.
And for so many years it just was never reported.
Correct. And so
with things like the Me Too movement and some of these other things, people are now feeling more supported in being able to report these things. But Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the ratios are, but I gotta imagine like 1 in 3 people either
I've
have been or have a family member
I
who,
can tell you that I have a larger jury panel on a sex case than I do on any other type of case
yeah,
that
yeah,
I can pick from
yeah,
because I just need more people available to me. But that's also why I think it's so important that as a prosecutor, I'm critically looking at everything that is in front of me and to make that decision because I understand that in making that decision, I am starting a process that
you
is
know,
going
great
to.
power comes great responsibility. You know, it's
Correct,
like
correct,
Spider-Man. Yeah.
correct. And so it is a critical decision making that we have to engage in, and the conversations that we're having with the adults, especially that are involved in these situations, have to be such that they might be uncomfortable, but you have to have them. You have to make sure that you're doing everything possible to make the right decision.
And then another part of it is what happens after the conviction when you're dealing with what the defendant is getting. And, you know, this is not something that you face
Yeah.
as a judge. Again, you're applying the law, but I really think that we as a society, we as a government, we as a mental health, you know, community have so far to go on how we address this situation because, you know, I truly am convicted through my experience with it that it is an illness. It is a mental illness. You don't have to agree or even comment with me, comment on it because I know it's somewhat of a hot button issue. But, you know, these are people that, you know, there's an illness and there's got to be something done with it. But because it's such a hot topic thing, it always kind of goes to the extreme. You know, we got to castrate everybody, we got to kill everybody, we got to do all these different things. And, you know, I think there's a much more nuanced conversation that we as a society have to have on it, but we have to get past the emotional outrage of it. Not that those things aren't warranted, of course, but you know, it's just a very interesting area. So you can comment or not comment.
It, you're right. The
Yeah.
emotional aspect of these types of cases is different than any other type
Yeah,
of case.
yeah.
And so it definitely lends to a different conversation than anybody will have in any
Right.
other type of case. You want to talk about drug treatment and you know the issues that we're having with the opiate epidemics and all of the things that we're doing as far as treating that and the types of crimes that result as a result of the addictions that people are suffering. I think that people have a different perception and willingness to have that conversation than necessarily when you're talking about sex assault and sexual abuse and things of that nature. And it just becomes an emotionally charged topic for a lot of people. I think you're right about that.
So have you thought about what it is that you like in a judge or what it is that makes a good judge in your mind? You know, I definitely have my answer, but I'm going to do it a little bit different with you this time, and I'm going to ask you your opinion first.
Okay.
So what's important in a judge for you?
I think probably the most important thing is temperament.
Yes. Okay. Either we agree or you've listened to my podcast. All right,
No,
go ahead.
I've been in front of 20 some judges at this point, and I can tell you that the first thing that you look for is, you know, is this judge going to treat everybody fairly? Is this judge going to listen and be honest and fair and apply the law in a way that isn't personal or isn't motivated by something other than whatever is in front of that person at that moment? I've been in front of judges who have very kindly, you know, told all the litigants to stop talking and sit down. And there might be times when that's appropriate. And I've been in front of judges who yell and who lose their temper on the bench and who get red and
There's
you know.
one or two I could think of. Yeah.
And you
I'm
have
not
to
gonna
sit
name names, but
and you sit down and you
Yeah.
think, okay, like this is no longer going to be productive. And I
Right.
certainly think that if I had to pick one quality that I would want to emulate, it would be a good temperament. It'd be an
And
even temperament.
from what I know of you, I can say to the listeners, I can't right away think of what the cases were. I know I've had cases with you, and I always came away from that experience, you know, happy with how I was treated, you know, because it's as a defense attorney, you're always, at least in my opinion, somewhat disadvantaged dealing with the state because when you're in private practice and family law, like I can have a fight with my opposing, I don't mean a physical fight, but I can have an argument with opposing counsel and it can get heated and whatever else, and okay, that guy doesn't like me, that's fine. You make a name for yourself with the state attorney's office, you're kind of marked for life. So you've got to really, there's some weight that comes behind you as a prosecutor, and you can do different things with it. You can be like you, who's, pleasant, professional, tries to really take things as they come and make an informed judgment, or you can just kind of, nope, whatever, and kind of take it down a certain road. So at least as a prosecutor, I can speak to your temperament, and so
I appreciate that.
But I agree 100%. Yeah, that is the biggest one for me. And a lot of the times, what I've seen in some different races is these people who it's their third, fourth, fifth time running. They finally get the seat, and they're just miserable up there. They are just absolutely miserable, and so. People who are running this time or any other time, if you'll take unsolicited advice, it's talk to every judge you can talk to and ask them the no frills, no sugar. Give me the down and dirty of what is this job, because I don't know if it was Greg Green or Leanne Gowdy or who it was, but they were telling me that one of the biggest complaints that the judges have is that they feel isolated.
Well, we go from being these social creatures, especially litigating attorneys, that, I'm in a courtroom every day and I'm dealing with my other assistant state attorneys and the defense bar and the public defenders and victims and witnesses. And at any given moment, I'm having a conversation with 5 people, to basically sitting on a bench on your own and being in the back in the chambers with your JA and your bailiff. And so it becomes a different lifestyle. And I do know that. I have spoken, which is funny that you say, speak to as many judges, because I have spoken to a lot of judges in preparation for this, and just to talk and learn, and there's so much learning that has to happen at this point. And
the other thing I tell you, and this hasn't really occurred to me to talk about on the podcast until just now, but and this may or may not be important to you, but especially for people who are running for judge who haven't ever worked in private practice. Running a business, being a private attorney is, and I'm not looking for anybody to feel sorry for us, but it's not an easy job. And to keep yourself in business, you have to take a volume of clients, which oftentimes has you in multiple courtrooms, if not multiple courthouses at a given time. There's many attorneys who, they got an 8:30 in CJC on 49th Street, they got a 9:30 out at Port Richey, they got an 11 here in Twigg Street, and some judges I don't feel are sympathetic to private attorneys. And I don't see it as we're looking for special treatment as private attorneys, but if you're a public defender, you're not going anywhere else that day. You're in that courtroom. If you're a state attorney, you're not going anywhere else in that courtroom. You did that one day. And now I understand with the jail, you got to take sometimes in custody people first. If there's interpreters, you need to have that first. But some of these judges will have private attorneys sitting around for 3-4 hours, and it's just like, you're killing us. And then they complain when you have to get people covering for you. Mm-hmm. It's like you need to show up to court, so I have it covered. It's like, okay, but call me when the case was supposed to be called, not 3 hours later. So
I will tell you, I obviously don't have any civil practice or civil experience, but I do have Ken.
Sure.
And I say that only to say that he's opened his own firm, and he has had his own firm since, I think, 2004 or 2005. And so although I haven't personally experienced it, I've experienced it all through him.
Yeah.
I know every time that he has come home and talked about, whether or not he had to run three different courthouses that day, and if I have to do depositions in a different county, he's like, well, it's one day, as opposed to my everyday schedule, and the amount of work that has to go into it, and the fact that you are running a law office, and you're also simultaneously working the books, and you're working the advertisement, and you're working all of the other things that it takes to just run the building and the office, and all of the things that have nothing to do with the Juris Doctorate degree that you're holding. And so I do understand. I feel better than some other just prosecutors who have never had any of that experience, what it takes and what that means. And I've gotten the text where it's like, I'm still stuck here and I've got to be somewhere else in 20 minutes. And how in the world am I going to get there in 20 minutes? Because I'm stuck in this courtroom and nothing is moving. And so I feel your pain.
Yeah. And it's hard because some attorneys are cocky, some attorneys are narcissists, some attorneys do have ego, and they just want to be the belle of the ball. But it's just like I don't come at it from a point of ego, but it's just like you said, and like
It's
I said,
hard.
you got to be a million places at one time, and some of these judges, you set a case for 8:30, but you don't get on the bench till 9:30, and I understand that you want the PDs to talk to all their clients or the states check in all their victims or whatever those types of things are, but then you do things alphabetic or you do things whatever, and it's like I've been sitting here 3-4 hours. I mean, I gotta go, and so take it or leave it as far as advice. But if you want the private bar to be voting for you, being sympathetic to their plight, I have to think might be helpful.
It has to be, and I
Um,
think that if I'm successful, which hopefully I will be, I think that there are important things to do, and there are important times to open it up to the parties that are going to be in front of you to get some constructive input or criticism and learn. I mean, I think that ultimately the seat that I'm going to be filling would be a family court seat. And so I would be in family court, which I've never done. And so I certainly would be.
my advice to you on that is don't be afraid to ask the attorneys in front of you for help because they're all too willing to write a brief, write a memo. And I've had judges, I remember when Judge Nazaruddin just came over
Yeah.
into family law and I started talking to him about Smith credits. And he gave me that look like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Well, so if you don't know, or for those that are listening don't know, if you're running a child support calculation and the person that you're seeking child support from has a previously ordered child support calculation, if they're current on that previous child support obligation, they get to take that amount of money off of their gross income before calculating the subsequent child support obligation. So there's these different types of things. And I remember he looked at me like a dog that didn't know where I was going. And I said, okay. And it was fine. I mean, we knew he was new on the bench and the opposing counsel was fine. And we said, well, here's the case and blah, 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 blah. And then we moved on from there. But, I think some judges feel like they have to know everything when they're on the bench, and you don't. That's not what you're there for. You're there for being a finder of fact and then applying the law. You'll have the law by the time you apply it, even if you don't necessarily have it when you're getting the facts come in. So, piece of advice to that end. Another thing that I see before we wrap up is a lot of times when judges are coming on the bench, they have all these great ideas for things that they're going to change. And sometimes it works, but oftentimes in my experience, it doesn't work. And it brings everything to a screeching halt for a while until either someone else is brought in or they figure out that they're not going to do it. One of the biggest ones that I've seen is where you get 2 pre-trials and it's a trial date, or 2, we call them dispos over here in Hillsborough, we call them pre-trials over in the 6th. But I don't think you can do that. Or, there's just these kind of things that people kind of come up with. And I guess you think you're moving it through by setting everything for trial, but what you're doing is you're eating up your trial docket. And at least in my experience, so I don't know how they're doing it over there right now, but have you thought of things that you're going to do to improve the bench, or things that you're going to steer clear of, or anything like that?
I mean, I think that definitely talking about putting forth any blanket rule is probably always going to end in failure because
Problems,
you can't successfully navigate that system that way. As far as changing the bench, I want to learn it first.
Right.
I need to learn it before. When I became a prosecutor, I asked the advice of the cops and the other attorneys and the bailiffs I was lucky enough to be working with court reporters at the time before Blue Man, and so I'd ask the court reporters. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have gone into the courtroom as a brand new prosecutor and change the way we prosecute cases. And I don't expect to do that as a judge. I expect to walk into the courtroom and continue to ask those questions of the same people probably.
That's well said.
And then learn before I can make any other decisions.
So where can people find you online? Do you have a campaign website? Where can people find you on social media, online, that sort of thing?
Social media, Facebook, it's Vergos for Judge. The website is also vergosforjudge.com. My personal Facebook is Eva Vergos. All the different events and things of that nature up online and on Facebook, so they can find me there.
Is there anything you want to tell the voters that'll hear this before you go, as far as why you want it, why you think you'll be good at it, why they should vote for you?
Yes, thank you,
I mean,
Josh.
we pretty much talked about it for the past hour, but sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I think that as a circuit court judge, you touch the lives of everyone in front of you, whether it's about freedom, children, money, estates, probate, juvenile sanctions, juvenile actions. I mean, you are single-handedly touching lives of people that are going to be impacted by your decision for so many years to come. It's not in that moment or in that time period. It's going to have a lasting effect. And I think that being qualified to do that and being able to do that well and being able to do it with an open mind and with a good temperament along the way is what we should all want as a community, as citizens. And I think that I can do that well. And so I'm really excited for this opportunity.
Yeah, well, it is exciting. So excited to have you on. Excited to hear about your career, your story, your campaign. Have you ever gone back to Greece?
I go back often.
Do you?
We have a house in Greece. So,
whereabouts?
You talked about Thessaloniki. My family is from Volos,
Okay.
which is about an hour and a half north of Athens, and we have a little house on the beach there. And
Oh
so
my God, that sounds amazing.
So Gabriel went back a year and a half ago. He wants to just move to Greece, and we go back often enough. It's a beautiful country.
It's unreal. It's almost like a fantasy. Now, there's a couple things I didn't love about it when I went. I don't know if this has changed. One of the things is you couldn't flush your toilet paper anywhere that we went, and that was interesting for a number of reasons. But the other thing is I think we were still in Skopelos, and we went out one night to a club. So there's a bunch of cool clubs everywhere. Every restaurant is amazing. I mean, literally, you walk down the beach and it's restaurant,
Right.
and all of them the ripest tomatoes you've ever seen, great
Freshest
beef,
food.
amazing vegetables. I got addicted to like Fanta orange soda, or I would just crush it when I was there. But anyways, one night we went out, Dean and I, with some of the other students. We were at a club, and for whatever reason we had an argument or something, and so we were walking home, and it was midnight, whatever. We walk back to our room, and she's upset. She's not talking to me. Taking off her makeup, everything else, and there's these like twin beds on each side of the room. We turn off the lights, get in the twin beds, and bam! The beds just slide across the floor into the middle of the room and hit each. It was an earthquake, and I had never before or since been through an earthquake. Scared the holy shit out of me. I jumped up and I had no idea what to do. I picked Dina up and I ran into the bathroom and I put her in the bathtub, and she goes, "I really think that's tornadoes." I completely didn't know what to do in an earthquake, and so I put her in the bathtub, and she's like, "I think we have to get out of the hotel." So middle of the night, we go out of the hotel, and the craziest part, I think I've told this before on the podcast, but the craziest thing is with the earthquake itself and then the aftershocks is it shakes all the trees, and the biggest bats I have ever seen in my life flying everywhere. So we're out of our hotel, we're exhausted, we've been drinking all night, our ears are ringing from the music. We're laying on beach chairs by the pool with these bats the size of like, Cocker Spaniels flying around through the air. And I was like, this is the most surreal. I feel like I'm on LSD or something right now. And I promise I wasn't, but it was, so that was my Greek experience. Tzatziki, Fanta soda, and giant bats.
You got to go back. There's so much more to do.
I know, but we did cliff diving. I've got great pictures of us cliff diving. It was so amazing. But anyway. Thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure talking to you. I'm really excited about your campaign. I wish you the best of luck, and hope you have a nice weekend.
Thank you so much, Josh.
All right.
You too.
Take care.